One more thing. The Anthony Davis trade saga is a huge problem for the Dallas Mavericks.
I'm not a doctor, so.
That's it. It's me versus the machine.
I don't know.
Satnam change.
Nice penetrating thrust to the middle.
Hot man, the hot player.
Wait. One more thing.
Fired up.
Yeah, welcome. You're still locked on to the Dallas Mavericks, your team every day. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member covering the Mavs for 10 years. Thanks for reading every day or listening to Locked On Mavs. If you missed the episode last night for the Mavs game against the Blazers with me and Slightly, go listen to that one. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use that code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And today's episode, I want to talk about the Mark Stein piece that dropped because the Anthony Davis trade saga is like a big conundrum issue for the Dallas Mavericks. We'll talk about that. We'll make it into Anthony Davis's injury and just a bunch of nuggets and pieces about the Mavs' new GM search, about who's making decisions for the Mavericks right now. Mark Stein dropped this piece on his Substack. An absolute must subscribe for every single Mavericks fan. And so all this stuff that I'm going to talk about today comes from that piece and then, people we've talked to and whatever. Let's start here. Mark Stein reports that the general consensus league-wide about Anthony Davis is that rival teams expect that the Mavs are going to trade Anthony Davis. They just look at the tea leaves and they say, all right, well, you've got this team right now and you were a win-now team. And, Anthony Davis was this big piece that got brought in by Nico Harrison. Anthony Davis was Nico's guy. Now the Mavericks are moving on. And so, of course, they're going to move on from Anthony Davis now. The Mavs have their 2026 draft pick. It's their pick. They own it outright. This is their last chance in the next 4 years to own a pick like this, to get a high draft pick, really. And so, of course, that they're going to bottom out and they're going to trade Anthony Davis. But then Mark Stein reports this. The general consensus league-wide is that Davis is going to have to put together a sustained stretch of productive basketball in December and January to generate a sort of trade interest that the Mavericks are going to want. And this is the conundrum that the Mavs have now with Anthony Davis. And this is, as I was talking to people at the game last night, you're just like, what do you do? Like, what is the play here for the Dallas Mavericks? Because let's say they do one thing, and some people have been saying this. Well, just shut Anthony Davis down. Just shut him down and let the Mavs tank, and then you'll just run it back next season, and you'll have your full complement and all that. You could do that, but then is Anthony Davis going to go for that? Anthony Davis is 32, and he doesn't have much basketball left in his career, like compared to the beginning of his career. And is Kyrie going to want to do that? Like, you've got two all-stars that have been these guys that have, one, like, asked out of situations before, and two, like, love to play basketball and are not going to just sit on the sidelines. And who is the commanding force that's going to be like, hey, you know what? You're not playing. Patrick Dumont is doing that right now. What happens if it's both of them? What happens if it's Kyrie Irving, that a player that the fans actually like love and have come to accept as a Maverick? Because he went to the finals with them. What happens then? And so the Mavs, I don't think they can just keep him out. Because one, it's a calf strain. It's not like he's out with an ACL like Kyrie is. Where if maybe Kyrie is ready to come back by the end of February. All right, well, you literally only got like 20 games left in the season or something like that. Bringing Kyrie back may not mess up their draft pick as much if they bring him back then. But we'll see. I don't know. With Anthony Davis, it's like he could come back. And he's got now this new timeline where he got reevaluated and he's out for 7 to 10 more days. He's going to be out like 5 or 6 more games or something like that. The Mavs, they have to play him at some point if they want to trade him this year. If they don't want to, they could do the thing where they try and shut him down. And they just are like, all right, well, let's just try it next year. The Mavs actually don't have an incentive next season to be bad. So if they bottom out now, they do the full rebuild. And they're like, all right, we're going to trade Anthony Davis, we'll trade Kyrie Irving, we'll trade Klay Thompson, we'll trade everybody that is going to make us relatively good. And they bottom out next year. Well, their pick is top 2 protected to the Hornets. So you're giving a top 10 pick to the Hornets, basically, if you do that. And so for me, I look at it and I say, all right, well, now that I've thought about it, and at first I was like, all right, just shut Anthony Davis down or just trade him. And now I don't know. I think they have to play him at some point this season, because I think you have to prove to other teams between this year and next year that if you don't trade him this year, you have to prove to other teams that he can actually play and actually play a sustained stretch. So I think the Mavericks have to play Anthony Davis this season. That's kind of where I've landed on it. Like, I think they have to bring him back for this season I don't really care about the production of the team this year, but I do care about how Anthony Davis is viewed, because if the Mavs aren't able to move on from him, then he's this $62 million like contract just sitting on the Mavs books for the next 2 years after this one. And the Mavs don't ever recoup any value from him. Like, or are they going to be good enough next season for me to be like, you know what? Forget the pick or the young player or whatever, the future for the Mavericks. Let's win right now with Anthony Davis. I don't know. I don't know that they're going to be good enough. I don't know that I saw enough, but it was only a couple games. It was like 3 or 4 or 5 games that we saw from them. The Mavs are starting to really figure it out now. Maybe it would have taken until now for Anthony Davis to figure it out. But we're also at a point where Cooper Flagg has played more minutes for the Dallas Mavericks than Anthony Davis has. That is a wild stat to me. That is, 1, frustrating, and 2, like, that is the Anthony Davis experience. And one of the reasons why you go back to the trade and are like, that is just absolutely insane, because this happens. And Anthony Davis has been like a theoretical player, and the times that he's played, he's been incredible and been a top 10, top 15 player. But when he doesn't, you get nothing. You get nothing. And the Mavs will get nothing if he doesn't play. So I think he's got to play. That's the other thing. The other thing in Mark Stein's report is that Daniel Gafford is widely regarded as the most tradable Maverick between now and the February 5th trade deadline, because we talked about this all offseason. They signed him to this extension, this deal that is still eligible to be traded. PJ Washington cannot be traded. Like, he physically cannot be traded because of his contract that he signed. So he cannot be traded. That's not an issue the Mavs will have to deal with. Daniel Gafford can still be traded even though he signed his extension. It was like just on the line of like, if he got paid a little bit more, he wouldn't have been eligible to be traded. It's this weird rule in the CBA and the collective bargaining agreement. But Daniel Gafford can be traded, and he's widely regarded as the most tradable. Dereck Lively just came back from injury. Anthony Davis, I think, will come back from injury at some point. Also, Moussa Cisse has been playing really well for the Mavs coming off the bench. He provides energy. He provides blocks. He obviously can get alley-oops. He's actually been pretty good, like switching on defense and just like an active athletic big. And then you got Dwight Powell too. Like, the Mavs have enough centers that I think that Daniel Gafford could be traded if one of Lively and Anthony Davis could stay healthy. Just one of them at a time. Like, if we just get one of them healthy at a time. Right now it's Lively, and then maybe Anthony Davis will. If they could just keep one of them healthy at all times, then they could be okay. But I also just said that I don't care about how good the Mavericks are this season. So yeah, Daniel Gafford is the next one I'm looking at as a guy to be traded. And that's when we talk about, maybe that's where you get another guard. Maybe that's where you get another some more offensive help. But I would just rather them get something for the future if they're going to trade Daniel Gafford. Coming up, the Mavs may have their new GM, because there's somebody that has interest that the Mavs are also interested in. Is it the best move for the Mavericks? We'll talk about that and more. Locked On Mavs continues coming up right now. Today's episode of Locked On Mavs brought to you by Robinhood. Your ambition just met its match. With Robinhood, you play for the win, not just on game day, every day. Locking in on every opening, beating your PR, beating it again. Channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks and ETFs, options, futures, and crypto, all on one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood's Legends Advanced tools, or take advantage of the new Robinhood strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself. Expect more from your money. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's Robinhood.com/yourmoney. It's your money, your move. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. Basketball season officially here. Nothing beats being in the arena. Being in the arena last night when Cooper Flagg was going off in clutch and was hitting some shots and was throwing some great passes. And when he got that huge dunk in transition, got an and one, like, there's just nothing that beats the feeling of a crowd, like being excited about a basketball game. That's where Game Time comes in. They can help you get there. The app gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NBA tickets, easy, fast, and stress-free. I can attest. I've used this to get NBA tickets, also WNBA tickets and concert, theater, comedy shows, all kinds of stuff. I've used Game Time. Their zone deal is a game changer. You pick the section, Game Time picks your seats, and you save big. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA, all one word, LOCKEDON NBA, for $20 off. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. It's a One More Thing bonus episode of Locked On Mavs. We've been doing a bunch of these recently because there's just so much to talk about all the time. We talked about the Mavs and the Blazers game last night with Slightly. Go listen to that episode. Isaac did another bonus one recently where we talked about the GM search and who he thinks should be the GM. So we were just going through all these. I talked about Dirk's comments on Amazon Prime about Nico and the firing and all that. And woo, that was a big statement from Dirk. So go listen to that one if you missed that one. All kinds of good stuff here on Locked On Mavs. Check the link in the description, QR code to find ways to follow the show. Mark Stein, his piece in his Substack that is just a must read for all Mavs fans. Talked about the trade things with Anthony Davis and with Daniel Gafford. And here are a couple of things he said for the GM search. So former Warriors GM Bob Myers, who is a name that a bunch of people have brought up for the Mavericks. Like, oh, could Bob Myers be the next GM? Bob Myers was the one that was, kind of the architect around Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, Draymond Green, the Splash Bros, and their 4 championships. And the connection is that Rick Welts was the CEO of the Warriors, or the president, whatever his title was there. President of the Warriors on the business side, while Bob Myers was there. And so they have that connection there. He was running the business side. Bob Myers was running the basketball side. So now just bring him over here. Well, Mark Stein reports that GM Bob Myers is not a candidate for the front office opening in Dallas, and not even available to serve as a consultant to other teams or anything like that. He's now part of this like ownership group, and so he cannot be part of any of it. So Bob Myers is off the table. That's one. If people have brought it up, like that's not even somebody that the Mavs will even consider. The one that they will consider, and the one that is interesting, the one that also has interest in the Mavericks, according to Mark Stein, is Detroit Pistons executive, former advisor Dennis Lindsey, is the only known external candidate for the Mavericks post at this very early juncture. And the early rumbles are that Lindsey would indeed be interested. Of course you're going to be interested. He's like right, an assistant, executive or assistant GM or whatever with the Pistons. Trajan Langdon is in charge there. And so you're getting a promotion and you're actually getting the job that maybe you wanted here. Dennis Lindsey, we've talked about him a couple times. He was a guy that was in charge of the Jazz when they had Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. And so that was a pretty well done team. There's a lot of people that credit Dennis Lindsey with some of the moves the Mavs made going into the finals because he was consulting with the Mavericks at that point. And so the PJ Washington move, the Daniel Gafford move, some of those moves that were made that we don't know how much input Dennis Lindsey had on those. How much was Nico? How much was Dennis Lindsey? I don't know. I'm not one that's going to say that was all Dennis Lindsey. Nico Harrison didn't do anything good. I don't think that's true. But Dennis Lindsey being interested in the Mavericks and somebody that could be brought in, I'm interested in that. That's a guy with experience. Isaac's big thing on it, the one more thing the other day was just bring somebody in with experience. You don't want somebody that's never done this job before because you got to dig yourself out of this hole. And somebody that knows how to dig out of a hole is something that the Mavericks need. And so Dennis Lindsey, I think, would be somebody that would be interesting. He also knows the personnel here with the Mavericks. He knows like the people here. He knows ownership to an extent. That's somebody that would be interested. And the fact that he's interested back in the Mavericks is now this whole media game where you play where you're like, oh, are you interested? Are you, check the box. Yes. Do you like me? Do you not like me? Like that's what we're doing right now. The other thing I found interesting from the Stein report is who is making decisions for the Mavericks now, because Nico is out. Nico was the one making all decisions, basically. It was Nico's voice, and Nico had pushed out anybody that had any other kind of power besides him and the owner. And that's how the Luka trade happened. Like that's how the Luka trade happened, is because it was just him and the owner, and that was it. And those are the only two people that signed off on it. And so at the highest levels, let's say that. Right now, Mark Stein is reporting that Mark Cuban is giving input on team decisions again, going straight to Dumont. This is something we've already talked about, but I think it's notable that it's being reported again that Cuban is back in Dumont's ear, and Patrick Dumont is going to Mark Cuban and asking him for advice and asking him for stuff. It is not this thing where Dumont and this new ownership group is like, oh, well, that's what Mark Cuban did. We're not going to do that. We're just going to push that to the side. And he's taking input from Cuban, and I think I think it's smart for him to just take any kind of input he can get. Cuban was the owner for 25 years or 23 years outright. And so it's notable to get input from him, but Cuban is the one pushing Dennis Lindsey. And so that's also a notable thing. But right now, Stein also reports that Matt Riccardi and Michael Finley, who are the co-interim GMs right now of the Mavericks, and Jason Kidd are the basketball cabinet for the Mavericks right now. He said Cuban is giving input, but that the real decision makers, the three that are actually really like, if Patrick Dumont, let's say he's the president and he goes to his cabinet, the Secretary of Defense or War or whatever, the Secretary of Transportation, the Secretary of Education, whatever, like the cabinet that they would talk about in politics for the president. But Dumont's cabinet is Matt Riccardi, Michael Finley, and Jason Kidd. Those are the 3 people making decisions for the Dallas Mavericks right now. So if they make a decision you don't like, it is on those 3 right now. If they make a decision you do like, thank those 3 right now. And so those are the ones making decisions for the Mavericks. So it's interesting that we know that now. I'm curious to see how they take this. We've talked about some of the candidates that have, been brought up, but the only real candidate that is being reported is Dennis Lindsey, and he also has interest in the Mavericks. Notable. Check the QR code, links in the description, different ways to follow the show. We'll be back with another episode. Slightly and I will have the Mavs against the Timberwolves game, and so come back and check out the show for that. We'll also have another bonus tomorrow with Isaac talking about some stuff, and so be here. Thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs. One more thing.
Peace out.